A Study by Bernard Down, by C.V. Angels. A Batman and Young Justice fanfic, rated for teen and up audiences, with additional tags for identity reveal, secret identity, do not take this seriously at all, established relationship, meet the family, or the core 4 family. Bernard fancies himself a detective. He does his best. Pining. Con is pining so bad. Bank robbery. Gothamites are incapable of being normal, and Bernard is somehow then even worse. They're in love, Your Honor. Polyamory negotiations. Getting together. Making out. And these boys all have 2 hands. Summary. Bernard opens the laptop, spinning it to face Tim with a flourish. It's a PowerPoint, with a truly horrendous red background, and Tim feels a moment of relief that Bernard isn't breaking up with him before he registers the words on the slide. Reasons Why Timothy Drake Wayne is a Superhero. A Study by Bernard Down. Based on my Tumblr post. Quote, I'm obsessed with the idea that Bernard, figures out that Tim is a superhero, but guesses the wrong one. He compiles all this evidence and makes a PowerPoint and presents it to Tim, and is like, Tim, I figured it out. Your impulse. End quote. Chapter 1. Hey, babe. Tim calls, pushing open the door to Bernard's apartment with one hand, the other laden with curry from the Thai place on the corner. Hey! Bernard calls back from somewhere within the apartment. You can put that stuff in the kitchen. I'll be right there. Tim makes his way to the kitchen, setting the takeout on the counter and reaching up into the cabinet for bowls. He hears the creak of the door opening and Bernard's soft footfalls. Tim turns to see Bernard, who has a laptop tucked under one arm and a bright grin on his face. He pulls Tim in for a brief kiss. I've got to talk to you about something, Bernard says as he draws back. The smile is still fixed on his face, but Tim can't help the curl of unease in his gut. Now? It'll be super quick, I promise, Bernard says, setting his computer on the counter beside them. As long as you don't interrupt. Bernard opens the laptop, spinning it to face Tim with a flourish. It's a PowerPoint, with a truly horrendous red background, and Tim feels a moment of relief that Bernard isn't breaking up with him before he registers the words on the slide. Reasons Why Timothy Drake Wayne is a Superhero. A Study by Bernard Down. Tim blinks. Blinks again. Blinks a third time for good measure, but the words on the slide don't change. He lets his gaze drift up to Bernard, who is still beaming. Bernard. That counts as interrupting. Bernard says breezily, Listen, give me 10 minutes, and then if you want, we can definitely pretend this never happened for the sake of your secret identity. And, well, Tim has been trying to find a good way to tell Bernard his identity for a few weeks now. If he puts up a few token protests on something Bernard figured out on his own, there's no way Bruce can get mad at him for it. He really isn't interested in the lecture he's sure Bruce has prepared. Which is definitely unfair if you ask Tim. It's not like he told Steph when they were dating. Bruce did that. Alright, Tim says with a laugh. Show me what you've got. 1. Constant new scars. Bernard gasps into Tim's mouth as Tim's hands skate down his sides. Tim's been away for 2 weeks on business, and Bernard's missed him. Bernard never thought he'd be this clingy in a relationship. But he really, really, really likes Tim, and really, really, really enjoys getting to see and touch and taste him. Bernard's fingers fumble on the buttons of Tim's shirt, and the two of them pull apart so Tim can shrug it off. Tim draws a sharp breath. He knows Tim has scars. Everyone does, in Gotham, and being wealthy just made Tim more of a target. But the long, still pink burn down his side is definitely new. Tim follows his gaze and winces. Got mugged walking back to the hotel, he says. What? By a Sith Lord? Bernard bursts out. What kind of mugger carries a weapon that can do that? Tim shrugs. Stolen alien tech. That's what the police told me anyway. Bernard reaches out, fingertips gentle as they trace the new skin. You are an absolute magnet for trouble. Apparently. Tim shrugs, as Bernard replaces his fingertips with his lips. 2. Crazy good physique. Why are you so good at this? Bernard gasps, hunching over to put his hands on his knees and catch his breath. They had signed up for one of those American Ninja Warrior classes at a local gym as a fun way to spend the afternoon. Bernard doesn't consider himself in bad shape. He's still taking judo lessons every other week, after all. But he's completely winded by the end of the second set of obstacles. Tim, however, has barely broken a sweat, and is eyeing the salmon ladder with determination. He grins down at Bernard. I used to basically parkour through Gotham, when my parents left me alone as a kid. He laughs. Guess it stuck. Tim winks at Bernard before he launches himself off the mat, hands grasping the bar. Bernard watches Tim's shoulders move underneath his shirt, muscles tense and flexing as he pulls himself up. Damn! Whatever exercise routine Tim's doing now, it is working. 3. Disappearing during major crises. Shit, Tim mutters, looking down at his phone as it continues to buzz in his hands. Bernard looks up from where he's sprawled next to Tim as some campy slasher movie plays on the television. Work emergency? Tim's fingers are flying over his phone keyboard as he stands. Yeah, some fires I've got to put out, Tim sighs, looking over at Bernard. I'm really sorry to run. Bernard shrugs, moving to wrap his arms around Tim. Duty calls. I get it. He presses a kiss to Tim's hair. Tim leans into him for a moment with a soft smile, before pecking his cheek and pulling away. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Bernard waves him off, watching as Tim nearly sprints out the door. He drops himself back down onto the cushions, staring at the screen for a few moments, before pressing pause. They can finish the movie later, if they manage later. This is the 5th date night in the past few months that has been interrupted by Wayne Tech emergencies. Bernard's not mad at Tim. He knows what he signed up for when they started dating. But it's still frustrating. Content to waste the rest of the evening without Tim, Bernard scrolls to a news channel. On the screen, a massive inferno blazes across a town in the Midwest, caused by some very tall and sinister robot aliens. The Justice League is fighting, and they're not losing, but it certainly seems like an all-hands-on-deck situation. As Bernard watches, some of the younger heroes join the fray. The Bats, the Titans. With their combined efforts, they're able to beat back the invasion. The fight concludes, and a reporter's face fills the screen. Bernard clicks the power button as his phone vibrates against his chest. Problem dealt with. The text says, someone from robotics is definitely getting fired over this. Still, sorry for bailing. Make-up movie night on Saturday? Bernard grins down at his phone, typing out a reply. Saturday sounds perfect. 4. Lots of trips to San Francisco. More than any other Wayne Tech office. Call me when you get there, alright? Tim nods distractedly as he hunts through his closet for a specific tie or shoe or something else. Bernard's not really sure. Bernard walks up behind Tim, wrapping his arms around his waist and propping his chin on his shoulder. Tim tilts his head back for a brief kiss before he goes back to shuffling hangers. What are you even looking for? Bernard asks, not releasing Tim. Tim throws his hands in the air in defeat. One of the guys out there wanted me to bring a specific jacket, but I definitely can't find it, and I don't even think I have it. Bernard raises an eyebrow. You're close enough with those guys that they know what jackets you own? It's his jacket. He lent it to me last time I was out there, because it decided to snow. Remember that? Anyway, I'm positive I gave it back before I left. I'm not spending any more time looking. It's not here. If it were anyone else, Bernard might be worried that he was being cheated on. But this is Tim, and the annoyance lacing his voice is more than enough to dissuade the notion. Tim crosses his arms with a huff, and Bernard can't help but laugh. Seems like this guy has a crush. He teases. Tim flushes. He does not. Bernard hums. I mean, he gave you his jacket, 'cause you were cold. Babe, that's the oldest trick in the book. And you're his boss, which makes it illicit and sexy. Oh my god, shut up. Tim turns in his arms until they're face to face. The blush still hasn't left his cheeks, but a slow smirk curls on his lips. Maybe you should lend me a jacket, so he won't have to next time. Bernard grins, shrugging out of his hoodie and draping it over Tim's shoulders. He pulls Tim in for a long kiss. Stay warm, babe. 5. Has been keeping a secret since high school. Tim's got his face pressed to the surface of the lunch table when Bernard slides into the seat across from him. Bernard stares, then shrugs, and pulls out a bag of carrots. Hey, what did you get for question 6 on the chem homework? Bernard asks, leafing through his folder. Tim lifts his head and blinks up at him blearily. There are dark bags under his eyes, and his lip is split. I didn't do the chem homework, he says, sounding more like he spent the weekend eating a cheese grater. You look like hell, dude. Tim makes a noise that might be in agreement. As if spurred into very slow motion by Bernard's appearance, he drags a very sad sandwich out of his backpack and starts munching. He looks exhausted, and Bernard is sure that chemistry isn't the only subject that he didn't get done. Bernard glances at the clock, then down at his worksheet. Hey, Tim, he says. We've got 20 minutes. Want to work on the chem homework now? I can help you with the stuff I already did. Tim just looks at Bernard for a moment, before the smallest smile graces his face. Sure, man. I appreciate it. 6. The 6th slide, in Bernard's admittedly very convincing PowerPoint, has 2 photos. One is of Tim's Young Justice days, and the other is more recent, with the Titans. Both photos have been cropped to contain the people that would have been present in both. Him, Bart, Con, and Cassie. Tim's impressed. He knows Bernard is smart, and that anyone who spends enough time with him, in close contact with him, is sure to pick up on a few things. But Bernard has really put together a compelling argument. Everything he's pointed out does paint a picture towards Tim's nightlife. Okay, Bernard continues. Now we've reached the conclusion that you're a member of the Titans, and that you've been doing this at least since we were 15. So, you have to be one of these 4. Impulse, Robin, Superboy, or Wonder Girl. Tim nods, ever the active listener. So, I'm pretty sure we can rule out Wonder Girl on the basis that her identity is already kind of public, and there's no way you're Superboy because he's basically invincible, and I literally saw you cut yourself on the can opener 3 days ago. Tim opens his mouth to defend himself. The can opener was stuck shut, and he was trying to fix it, okay? It's not his fault that his hand was too close to the cutting edge when he finally did. Plus, he fixed it! You're welcome, Bernard! So then, Bernard presses on, not giving Tim a chance to speak. I had 2 more choices. Drumroll, please. Tim sighs, but dutifully taps his fingers on the countertop. Bernard grins and clicks to the next slide. Tim Drake is Impulse. What? Tim nearly yells. Impulse? Tim loves Bart. He does. But really? Impulse? Bernard rolls his eyes. Don't act surprised, babe. I figured you out. I'm a normal human guy. Obviously you can make it seem like you're normal, or else the entire world would know who the Flash is because he'd be speeding everywhere. I've got black hair. Bernard shrugs. Wigs exist. Tim gapes. He cannot believe this. Bernard was doing so well, too. Okay, sorry. Go back. Why is Robin off the table? Bernard is quiet for a moment. I mean, he's who I thought at first, but Robin is pretty publicly with Spoiler, and I, didn't think you'd do that to me? Tim just breathes for a moment. Okay, he gets it. He does. Robin and Spoiler broke up, Tim says gently. Since when? Like 8 months ago. Bernard squints at Tim for a moment. They're still seen together all the time. Before Tim can reassure him, understanding crosses his face and he grins. I see, you're trying to put me off the scent. You're definitely Impulse. Oh my god. This is Tim's life, apparently. This is what he signed up for when he started dating someone so very smart, who is also very much an idiot. Tim should take the out. Let Bernard think what he will, and neither confirm nor deny. But Tim has a reputation, goddammit. And there's no way he's letting Bernard think he's a speedster of all things. Tim pulls out his phone and sends a text, which is immediately answered by a video call. Hey! Bart's masked face fills the screen. Why did you need me to suit up and call you? Are you okay? Is there an emergency? Are you dying? Tim might be dying if all this continues for much longer. If there's an emergency, he says slowly, why would I text? We have official protocols for that. Sure, Bart nods, hair bouncing with the movement. So what's up? Tim suddenly feels a little foolish, but he's in too deep now. I just needed to prove that I'm not impulse, he says, turning the phone to face Bernard. There's a sudden loud gasp from the phone. Is that Bernard? Hi, Bernard! I'm coming over, bye! Wait, no. Tim starts, but the line is already dead. Bernard looks quickly from the phone to Tim and back. So, Robin and Spoiler definitely aren't together anymore. Tim grins. Nope. Robin's dating a very cute boy who jumps to literally insane conclusions. Bernard beams, and it's a nice moment, until Bart breaks into Bernard's apartment. Not quite a break-in, Tim supposes, since the door was unlocked, but certainly uninvited. Tim doesn't know why he expected anything else. Bernard jumps when Bart seemingly appears out of thin air, and sticks a hand out. Hi! He says brightly, before glancing back at Tim. You told him, right? I told him who I am, but... Bart turns away from Tim before he can finish his sentence, pulling off his goggles. I'm Bart! Tim groans, covering his face with his hands. Bernard reaches a tentative hand out and shakes Bart's. Bernard? It's, nice to meet you. Totally! And Tim, dude, don't worry. You trust him and I trust you, so it's fine. Bart moves around both of them to inspect the curry on the counter. Besides, you said we couldn't meet Bernard until he knew because we're indiscreet and hazards to society, so now I'm only one of those things. Bernard laughs. Tim, you're also a hazard to society. Oh, I like you! Bart grins, nudging Bernard with his shoulder. Warmth flares in Tim's chest as he watches Bart and Bernard. After all this time, Tim really does care what his friends think, and a small part of him was nervous, that maybe they wouldn't get along, that they wouldn't like each other. It's a relief. Tim's glad Bart showed up, even as he puts in an order from the Thai place to accommodate Bart's appetite. Now, all Tim has to do is introduce Bernard to Con and Cassie. Tim sets his phone down, just as someone hammers on the front door. Bart is up before Tim or Bernard can move, answering the door with a bright greeting. Tim sighs. Speak of the devils, and all that. Tim mouths an apology to Bernard as he follows Bart to the door. Con's shoulders slump with relief when Tim enters his line of sight. He and Cassie are standing in the doorway, suited up and ready for battle. Tim pulls them inside, casting a glance down the hallway to make sure no one saw Superboy and Wonder Girl banging on the door of Bernard's apartment. Indiscreet. And hazards to society. Are you okay? Cassie demands as soon as the door is shut. Why wouldn't I be? Tim asks. Bart ran past us on the way out of the tower and said he was going to Gotham. Con explains, hands on Tim's shoulders as he inspects him for injury. He was suited up and moving fast. We thought you were dying or something. Tim pinches the bridge of his nose. We have protocols. I met Bernard! Bart interrupts, gesturing down the hall, where Bernard has come to a stop, hands in his pockets. Cassie's entire face lights up. Bernard? Boyfriend Bernard. Bernard waves. That's me. Con finishes his inspection and releases Tim. An easy smile crosses his face as he follows Cassie to greet Bernard. Bart grins at Tim, shooting him 2 thumbs up as he dashes back into the apartment proper. An answering grin curls across Tim's face. He shakes his head with a chuckle and pulls out his phone. They're going to need more food. Chapter 2. Con thinks he handled the reveal of Tim's boyfriend pretty well, all things considered. When Tim had gathered them together in the tower just before returning to Gotham, a flush high on his cheeks and hands fidgeting at his sides, to tell them that he was seeing someone new, and that someone was a boy, and his name was Bernard, Con had grinned and pulled Tim into a tight hug and congratulated him. They all had. Bart collided with them at speed and talked a mile a minute, while Cassie wrapped her arms around them all. It was nice, and it was normal, and Con was so happy for Tim that he ignored the implications of the whole thing. That Tim was into guys. That Tim, Con's extremely capable and insanely badass and incredibly hot best friend, was into guys. Con was a guy. Con was a guy who would have been blind not to notice Tim, but hadn't let himself even entertain the thought, because Tim was dating Steph. And also, Tim was straight, except Tim was into guys. Tim had left for Gotham with a wave, eyes bright and smile wide and wild. Left for his home with his family and his boyfriend. The guy he was dating. The guy he was dating that wasn't Con. Con blinked once, twice, before slumping heavily down onto the sofa. He stares at the floor where Tim left, and ignores the whispered conversation Bart and Cassie are having behind him, until Cassie sits beside him, and tugs him down so his head rests in her lap. Bart tucks himself on the other side, under Con's feet. "Are you doing okay?" Cassie asks, hands carting through Con's hair. Her face is caught somewhere between sympathy and amusement. And, oh, she knew! Con swallows thickly, looking past her to the ceiling. "I think I'm in love with Tim," he says to the void, to the ether, to the two people who know him better than he knows himself. Bart's thumb traces idly over Con's ankle bone. Just a touch too fast to be soothing. "Have been for like 2 years, dude," he says, and yeah, that tracks. Cassie hums, tugging on a stray curl. Con lets her. It's grounding. Almost. More, I definitely noticed when we were dating. "Why didn't you say anything?" Con splutters, throwing his hands up, and barely avoiding smacking Cassie across the face. She doesn't flinch, just flicks him on the forehead. "I didn't think it mattered," she says. "I thought you at least knew you were into him, for one, and he was with Steph, so I didn't think I needed to worry about him being into you." "Because he isn't," Con mutters, and whoa, he needs to rein that bitterness all the way back in. He doesn't get to be shitty about Tim's happiness just because he was a moron for 2 years. Above all else, Tim is his best friend, and Tim deserves good things, and a nice boyfriend, and Con's unwavering support. Con flings himself up, hovering just above the ground. "This is stupid," he says. "I'm happy that Tim's happy, and I'm going to support the fuck out of him and Bernard, and if anyone gives him shit about it, I'll kick their ass." Cassie grins, slugging Con playfully on the shoulder. That's the spirit, Superboy. So Con thinks he took it pretty well. He comes to terms with the being in love with Tim thing, and the Tim has a boyfriend thing, and the idea that being in unrequited whatever wouldn't have to change anything. So the ice-cold chill he feels when Bart sprints past on his way to Gotham might not be a strictly platonic panic, but it doesn't matter much when faced with the idea of Tim in danger. He meets Cassie's eyes over the kitchen counter, and they both bolt, suiting up and setting out as fast as inhumanly possible. Con's heart rate doesn't go down until he sees Tim's exasperated eye roll, contrasting where Bart is vibrating with excitement. Cassie brushes by Tim to greet boyfriend Bernard, and Con takes the opportunity to give Tim another once-over. He's clearly in one piece and out of harm, and more importantly, he looks happy. It warms Con's heart, even as it pains him. Assured of Tim's well-being, Con turns his attention to Bernard. He's cute enough, Con supposes, tall and blonde and soft in a way that heroes just aren't. Con can kind of see what Tim sees in him, as Bernard stares, awestruck, as Cassie follows Bart deeper into the apartment. Con doesn't blame him. Cassie has that effect on people. Beside Con, Tim bites his lip to keep a straight face. "You good, babe?" Bernard startles, blinking owlishly back at Tim and Con. "Wonder Girl is in my kitchen, Tim." "Sure is," Tim hums with mock sympathy. "So is Impulse. Superboy's in your front hall." Con takes that as his cue to stick a hand out. "Con, or Connor, whichever." Bernard returns the handshake, and it's surprisingly firm considering he doesn't look like he's quite got a handle on reality yet. Just staring at Con like he's never seen an alien before. Maybe he hasn't. But it's Gotham, so Con finds that unlikely. "Bernard," he says weakly. You probably knew that. Bernard leaves his hand clasped in Khan's, just a hair too long, and Tim spectacularly loses his internal battle, a wide grin breaking out across his face. Bernard's gaze slants to him, and it seems to break the shock. Shit, sorry. Bernard curses, shaking his head to clear it. I'm an awful host. Come in, there's food in the kitchen. He gestures vaguely. I can take your jacket unless you want to hang on to it? Thanks, man. Khan shrugs out of the jacket, passing it off as he makes his way in. He stops in the doorway when he realizes neither of the boys followed him. Bernard is standing before the coat closet, darting glances between the jacket and Tim, a slow smile stretching across his cheeks. Tim, in turn, has flushed red. Absolutely not. Bernard's smirk widens. I didn't say anything, he says as he hangs the jacket and pulls the closet shut behind him. You're thinking it, and I'm telling you, you're reading into things. You? Bernard drawls, leaning into Tim's space. Despite his tone and scowl, Tim's body sways towards Bernard's, almost unconsciously drifting towards him. Are very defensive, considering I literally did not say a word. Tim steps somehow closer to Bernard, and Khan very suddenly feels like he's intruding. He turns away, moving into the living room and attached kitchen, where Bart has started dishing out curry, and Cassie is clicking through something on a laptop. Unfortunately, Khan has super hearing, and is ridiculously in tune with Tim, and can't help but hear as their conversation continues behind him. Need I remind you, Tim is saying, amusement coloring his tone, that the last time you put your deductive skills to the test, you completely ruled out the one vigilante I could possibly be. I was working with an incomplete data set, Bernard replies, voice barely above a whisper. And Khan can imagine him leaning in and... Christ, Khan needs to get a grip and stop getting jealous that Tim and his boyfriend are probably actually good for each other. Khan's saved from any further spiraling by Cassie breaking into raucous peals of laughter. Bart looks vaguely offended as she slaps a hand over her mouth, her shoulders continuing to shake. The laptop is turned in Khan's direction, and he sees the words, Tim Drake is in Pulse, written in large font across the slide. Tim and Bernard are at Khan's side in an instant, and Bernard groans when he sees the cause of the commotion. It made sense at the time, he protests, throwing his hands into the air. Oh, I see, Cassie says, wiping her eyes. They're both short, so it definitely makes sense. Tim splutters. I'm taller than Bart. Only in uniform because you put platforms in your boots. Impulse doesn't operate in Gotham, though. Khan cuts in, bemused, before Tim can argue. Okay, well, consider this. Bernard sweeps to the center of the room, eyes alight and suddenly much more confident than before. And maybe slightly manic. If you were so fast that you could travel anywhere in the blink of an eye, why would you bother living in the city you protect? You could live anywhere. You should live somewhere else to maintain the identity thing. Where better than a city full of vigilantes who aren't you? Cassie tilts her head, mirth still dancing in her face, even as she entertains the idea. Okay, point. What about the hair? Bernard lights up as he moves next to Cassie, clicking through the slide deck until he finds the one he wants. So, we know Tim works for Wayne Tech, yeah? And we know they do things there that they don't disclose to the public. I think that they could easily have secretly developed wig technology that could withstand super speed. As their conversation continues, Khan lets his attention drift to Tim. Tim's relaxed, more than Khan has seen him in a while, a soft smile curling on his lips. He looks impossibly fond, and watching Bernard grow more animated as he gets comfortable with them. Khan gets it. Bernard is fun and alive and just the right side of crazy to fit with Tim. Well, I'm convinced, Cassie declares, after Bernard has answered all her questions in increasingly creative ways. Me too, Bart agrees, still in full costume, with his goggles perched on his head. Tim, are you sure you're not in Pulse? Tim rolls his eyes. Hilarious, guys. Really. He glances down as his phone buzzes, turning back to the hall. I got more food for you, but maybe I'll just sit in the lobby and eat it all myself. Babe, don't be like that. Bernard pouts, laughter in his eyes as he slips off his stool and catches Tim around the waist, before he can leave. I like you just fine at normal speeds. He lowers his voice, leaning into Tim's ear. Con wonders if he knows about his super hearing. Besides, I think it's hot that you can kick ass without powers. Bernard meets Con's eyes over Tim's shoulder with a wicked grin and a wink. Okay, he definitely knows about the super hearing. The two disappear to the lobby and come back with enough food to feed a small army, or a small group that happens to include Bart Allen. It's fun, getting to know Bernard, getting to spend time with the people Con cares about. When they leave, it's much more careful than they arrived, trying not to draw too much attention. Con spends the entire flight back trying to ignore the fact that his jacket now smells faintly like Tim and Bernard from its time spent in the closet amongst their coats. He's entirely unsuccessful. In the privacy of his room, Con lays on his bed, staring at his ceiling. He can't quite parse how he feels, but he also can't turn his brain off enough to rest. He's content. He's jealous. He's ridiculously happy for Tim. He's somehow even more jealous, and he doesn't even know why. Tim is Tim, and Con cares about him so much, but that's not new. That feeling of longing is firmly lodged inside his lungs. But it's familiar. This is different, sharp and confusing. He thought he'd gotten used to the idea of Tim and Bernard. Bernard, who laughs loud and long and bright, and whose eyes are wild when he gets passionate. Bernard, who fucking winked at Con when he pitched his voice low, as he spoke directly into Tim's ear. Whose smirk got so far under Con's skin that he feels hot even now. And it's stupid. And Con doesn't know why he feels like this, or why the heat in his chest burns next to the smoldering torch he carries for Tim, and... Oh no. Notes. I looked up their canon heights and decided I simply did not care that Google says Cassie's now the shortest. She's 5'10" in my heart. Conversely, if it's funnier, she is shorter, but they're all so ingrained with the dynamics they had when they were 15 that it doesn't matter that they all got taller. She still exudes taller than you energy, and the boys don't argue.